Yeah, I like what you said about the commit part. That's what I like to call tech or die. So I just kind of want to swing back to what you were just saying now about, um, you know, legacy employees, right? And we know what that is code for, right? But legacy employees are, kind of being phased out, and a lot of these businesses, corporations are pruning and grafting their workforce and replacing some of these legacy employees with people from boot camp. So it sounds like you're saying that they're more open to taking people from a boot camp than in previous years past.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm noticing this in the trends that are taking place. And it did compel me to write one of my more recent books, which I'll discuss later. But just to backtrack, again, I do career coaching on both extreme fronts, ironically. Um, Placement, placement career coaching for those that were adversely affected by layoffs by companies like IBM, and for coding boot camps, people that are getting the skills necessary to transition to the tech industry. And you're right. There's mass layoffs that are taking place. Again, IBM being the biggest example, Salesforce being another example. But at the same time, I'm seeing a lot of coding boot camp graduates getting their first starts at these very same companies. And doing the research basically is, as you indicated, some of those variables are they're being phased out, their salaries. Uh, some of the legacy employees don't have as great as they are or as they were as being software engineers, etc. There's new technology that has come in that the coding boot camps can have picked up immediately because they were trained in these skills, and they can go into these roles and be able to perform those skills. And there is a financial piece to it at a lower salary, if you will. So there's a lot of variables that go into the workforce dynamics that are taking place, but it is occurring, and it is real.
Hmm. One man's L is another man's opportunity. Interesting. So, do you think that when it comes to these boot camps, it's not, let's say, it's not for everyone? What I mean is, for some people, the intense pace, the condensed format of
Yeah.
the educational material might be too much. It might be overwhelming. And if so, is the university route, although probably more expensive, the preferred or recommended course of action?
Yeah, great question. I'll give I'll give a bit of an anecdotal answer to that as well as a practical answer. Again, the practical answer first. Again, everyone's different, so you're right. Not every a boot camp is very intense, and that's why most boot camps, depending on what you sign up for and what you select, many of them advise you to not have a job, a full time job, but that may be difficult for most students. So a lot of them they try to become flexible as well. But nonetheless, the work is challenging and they're intense. They put students in a position to try to succeed by relying on mentors, other instructors, and their peers. So they really encourage a lot of peer work.
Hmm.
Would it be interesting for if someone who's not necessarily inclined for a boot camp to go the traditional route of a university? Perhaps that's good, as you indicated. It'd be longer, more expensive, but that work pace in that traditional environment, quite frankly, as a population, we're kind of groomed for that over the last, dare I say, 50 to 100 years, because particularly in the Western world, here in America, we're groomed for education. We're groomed for higher education. So that 2 to 4 years is always programmed in our mind about how we get trained to enter the workforce. So that may still apply. But as we know, technology disrupts and changes traditions. Quick anecdote: I'm a Gen Xer. I came of age in the '90s, and yes, I'm still a hip hop fan. So I'm still a Nas fan. I'm still a Wu Tang fan, and I'm still a Dre and Snoop fan. But coming of age in the '90s and coming out, and also I'm first generation college trained. So I'm the first person, and I'm 100% African American. The tradition of the African American tradition around education is very conservative. We, and particularly my generation, we knew we were going to college. We were the generation after the civil rights, and it was an expectation that we were going to college. So again, coming out in the '90s, there were only really like 4 or 5 careers you could choose from, and they weren't in tech per se. So you either went to law school, you went to medical school, you went to business school, or in my case, I went the PhD route and got a PhD because my expectation was to be a college professor for the rest of my career. Um, or you went to the public school route and you became a high school teacher or some type of high school administrator. Rarely was someone from the Black community, and particularly in those days, '70s, '80s, and '90s, were recruited out of the Black community to go into tech right out the gate, so to speak. So rarely was MIT or Stanford um, or Texas Tech or Georgia Tech going into the hood recruiting students out of public schools, based on their math scores and their science scores. It happened, but it didn't happen as often. Now, with the advent of coding boot camps in the 21st century, first going online in a quiet manner in the late 1990s, and then building momentum in the 2000s and on, as well as the advent of ed tech corporations, MOOCs, massive open online courses, Coursera being the most famous, that changed the work landscape. And now people can get the specific training they need, break tradition, and be able to train and get the roles that they want, being able to enter into the tech industry based on the specific skills of being a software engineer, a cybersecurity analyst, a data analyst, etc., without going the university route. Last point, in fact, as a career coach, I've worked with many students that already had BAs and masters um, in more of the liberal arts fields, and then they made career changes to go into the tech industry.
So it is possible to jump from a liberal arts major into tech, especially into a technical role in tech. What type of jobs do you specialize?
It's definitely possible. Oh yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely possible. What type of jobs do you specialize in coaching people with?
Sure. So the jobs I specialize in coaching people with to get those jobs are most prominently cybersecurity, and then on data analytics, user experience design, and also software engineering, software design. Those are big ones as well.
Hmm. Now, I noticed in your background, you spent some time working at Indeed.com as a customer success manager.
Hmm.
And in your description of your time and your activities there, you helped customers, in this case businesses, place job ads. Um, do you have any tips for people looking for jobs using Indeed? And how about just in general, whether it's Indeed or other online job sites?
Yeah, definitely. Everything is in the job description. And this is why again, when I work with people, whether they're at the coding boot camps or at the outplacement, or even individually in my own practice, the job description is the Rosetta Stone. That's the yellow brick road. That's the guide. One of the secrets I learned working at Indeed in creating this information for job ads and openings for these corporations, these businesses to be placed on Indeed, is they have specific criterion in their job description. So I always instruct people when they're applying for jobs, particularly on Indeed, read the job description, always match your resume to fit the job description. That is the most important thing. And when I say that, you don't have to, because sometimes people get a little spooked by the extra work. I, I use specific language. You don't need to revise your resume. You just need to edit your resume, particularly in the top two sections, the professional summary and the tech skills or the skills sections. The rest of the resume is pretty much fixed, like your experience, your education, etc. So you don't need to adjust those. But in the professional summary and the skills section, that's where you pluck out the keywords that's related to the job description and implement them in each resume for each individual unique job you apply for. That will yield you stronger results in your job search. Never say never, but I'll say no because I don't use absolutes. But I'll say never in this case. It's unwise for your job search to send the same resume to multiple different jobs and job applications. So you always got to do some work. But once you get into the rhythm of it, it actually becomes easy.
Right, the rhythm. Once you get into a rhythm, you kind of just jump right in and make the quick changes and submit. Assuming they don't ask you to type up everything on their own website, of course. That's always
Right.
the big pain. Um, on your Instagram account, you have a post about 5 tips for tech job success after completing a boot camp, and you mentioned networking and staying up to date on industry things, and even attending tech events, whether online or offline, in person. Do you have any specific examples of the types of events or actual events that are coming up, or networking activities in general that someone can participate in to help them speed up finding a software engineering job as they go through a boot camp?
Sure. And I actually created a little bit of a list, so I'll just give the short version of it. But definitely attend webinars. Sign up for as many webinars online and off if you're able to and attend them. And before I go on with the list, the big objective for getting a job in the tech industry is networking. And that's the most powerful platform, quite frankly, for doing that is going to be LinkedIn, and that's something that we can discuss as well, John, throughout this session if you want. But when you network, you tap into people's networks and their networks and their network, particularly the alumni of the boot camp that you may have graduated from. You tap into these networks and you build rapport with folks. And as you build rapport with folks, you're able to find out what their pain points are and where they need some support. If you're able to provide that advice, that increases your value in the marketplace. And that can lead to a possible referral for a job opportunity. When you connect with your peers, again, particularly on LinkedIn, they know who's doing the jobs that you want to do, particularly say, for example, a software engineer, they know about a job opportunity before the hiring manager or the recruiter actually makes it public on Indeed or LinkedIn or any other job search platform. And that's your window of opportunity to actually get a referral for that role. And quite frankly, it's better to be referred for a job than applying for a job cold. So networking is always going to be your key. But going back to the list, you want to do webinars, you want to do virtual conferences, you want to do hackathons, you want to go to many organizations that are tech talks or talk about tech and network with those groups. And online workshops, you definitely want to attend as many online workshops as possible. So for some offline events, again, tech conferences, meetups, again, meetup.com is one of the best platforms where you can connect with people of the same career interest and job title, meet with them and exchange ideas about how you can break into the tech industry. In other words, you don't have to rely on your own brain. You can rely on the multitude of brains you can connect with for strategies. Attend hackathons, tech expos, and tech workshops.
Hmm. Yeah, and I said software engineering, but truth be told, that advice applies to the entire domain of tech, cybersecurity, data analytics, cloud, etc. You want to definitely get out there and meet people, like you said. And just speaking from my own experience, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate. any job that I've ever had that I actually cared about was through a referral. Um,
Yeah.
and that was someone making it happen for me as opposed to applying online. So I
Right.
100% co-sign that as well. And just, to kind of um, refocus a bit, I'm speaking with Ramone Smith from techcareerguides.com. And Ramone has taken time out of this Saturday to provide us some insights as to what it takes to kind of successfully navigate through a coding boot camp, what it takes to just successfully get yourself entrenched into tech. Um, with that said, sometime in early 2024 or late 2023, I couldn't find out for sure. The article came out in the beginning of January, but it seems like it took place prior last year. But sometime recently, Forbes Advisor recently surveyed 500 coding bootcamp graduates about their experiences. One thing that stood out to me was when asked what motivated them to join a bootcamp, 38% responded entrepreneurial goals.
Yeah.
On Instagram, you had a post, the 5 tips for tech job success after completing a boot camp. And one of those tips you mentioned exploring freelance opportunities for a dynamic career path. What did you mean by dynamic career path? And what are some examples of freelance opportunities that would best achieve this goal?
Sure. So, what I meant by a dynamic career path is that your journey in the tech industry is going to be dynamic, meaning it's going to be a little unpredictable as you navigate the challenges that go before you. Um, and building your skill to be able to place yourself as to be marketed effectively as a problem solver in the tech industry, i.e., whether you're a data analyst, a cybersecurity analyst, a software engineer, UI, UX designer. In essence, we're always solving problems. That's the nature of any job. I say dynamic because as you enter those worlds, things are and as an entrepreneur per se, or someone that's doing freelance work, it's going to be learning as well as unpredictable about your career path. Our responsibility and your responsibility is to make those unpredictable events work to your advantage and build the career necessary to be sustained. And a great way is to start in by doing entrepreneurial work and contract work. And actually, Upwork is a great site for those first ones where you're able to get some contract work and then build from there. Your job search is in most cases going to be kind of long and a bit challenging, but there you will find work at the end of it. But at the same time, doing some contract work will be very helpful in the short run. It allows you to make some money, build your skill set up, as well as build your marketability up, and again, networking. But here are some other areas that I suggest can be used as well as to build your career using contract work as an entrepreneur. So you can do web development, which again, a lot of contract work for that. Mobile app development, a lot of contract work for that. Graphic design, heavy contract work for graphic designers. Content writers, SEO and digital marketing. Um, on the digital marketing, as a matter of fact, in my private practice, in my private career coaching, I actually hired a freelancer to do my digital marketing right now, and she's doing a really good job. So, uh, again, these are great ways. And the way I'm helping her is obviously I'm paying her a salary. She puts up my content. And as she job searches for a regular job, I'm able to give her a referral as well as I can be listed on her resume as her first real job in the tech industry.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That
she's one of my former students from a boot camp, so I hired her specifically. But just to share these other two, my friend, quality assurance testing,
hmm.
great contract work, cybersecurity consulting, data entry, a lot of contract work and part time work for data entry and analysis, IT support and troubleshooting, and e commerce development.
Hmm. This question, or no, excuse me, to go back to the source of this question, that survey had a number of questions. One of them was what prompted you to enroll into a coding boot camp? And one of the answers was entrepreneurial purposes. And that stuck out to me because, and what you said kind of crystallized that, that confidence that you get that from doing these things on a freelance side, for me, that showed up in a completely unexpected way. The dynamic career you talked about. When I was hired as a tech instructor, I realized I taught the IT support, helping people, pass like the A+. I realized I had done something for money on essentially every chapter in that book. Just out here in Atlanta, just scrambling, trying to get some money in my pocket. Like I've the malware, the computer, the website, the set up a server, something. I had done something for money. So when I spoke with like supreme confidence in that classroom.
Right.
And I realized it was because I had lived it, So
It was authentic. It was authentic. And empirical. You was able to, based on your skill set, you was able to generate an income based on providing and solving problems for others.
Yeah, and it was authentic, it was empirical. And when I think about it, a lot of people go into these courses, coding boot camps, with I'm not saying it's a wrong thought process. It's just, it is what it is. But, we do these labs, we do these exercises, we pass these exams, we get these certifications if it's more on the networking or IT side, and then we get the job. And that can happen, and that has happened. That has happened for a lot of people. But in terms of dealing with imposter syndrome, success on the job, being able to navigate, understanding how they do it with this technology at this particular job, going out there and shaking someone's hand and saying, yeah, for $5,000, I'll take care of that. And then when you go back home, you say to yourself, oh shit, I only know about 50% of this. I gotta brush up on some things real quick before, and that has happened to me a lot. I'm sure I'm not the only one where, and I'm not saying don't sign off on things that you don't understand. But what I am saying is sign up on things where you have an opportunity to stretch, where you kind of know what you need to take to get it done, right? Like I've never cooked Thanksgiving dinner before, right? But I mean, if you said, hey, look, John, if you can get Thanksgiving dinner together by next Thursday for $5,000, I'm going to cook Thanksgiving dinner. It's going to be something that's going to be handled, right? So same thing. So I put myself in situations where sometimes I had to stretch and grow from what I know and what I was capable to do at that point in time in order to get the job done. And that's where, I'm coming down the street going into work, as an instructor, and I'm beasting, I'm just like straight wolfing because I know I can do it. I know I can do it. I've done it. I know I can do things that I don't even think I can do right now because I put myself in that situation over and over again. So that's why I kind of brought that up. And I'm glad to hear you said that.
And if I may, John, let me add a little to that, particularly in the imposter syndrome aspect. Because I actually do have a book that addresses imposter syndrome, and I'll share some of those remedies, if you will. First of all, if you're not scared, you're not thinking big enough. So you're supposed to be scared in something that puts you in a position where you're rethinking because it's supposed to be a challenge. But two things: one, again, rely on your network, and continue to build your skill set up. But more importantly, and number two, take action, do the job. Like you said, let the empirical experience of doing something, particularly for money, do your best and let the world give you feedback on either you did it great and it was okay, or if there were areas of improvement, just improve and then do it again and then do it again. And then the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more desired positive results you get and feedback. And then ultimately it becomes, again, what's embedded in your knowledge, your know-how, your hands, your brain, your neurons, and you're able to actually perform it and do it to a way it's very professional, and you're able to command your salary based off that. but actually take action and do it. That's always my advice. I have a personal and it's I have a personal philosophy about this, and trust me, it has happened on many occasions. I'd rather fail miserably at something, even embarrassingly miserably, and I have, than not do it, because I have to give myself a chance to succeed and learn. So that's how I would address that as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that last point is so poignant. You got to fail at something. I'm not that you're aiming for that, but what you're aiming is to get the experience, done and over with and out the way so you can have some takeaways. And sometimes the best takeaways are from when you fall the hardest, you know, and that kind of, you learn never to do that again or to do it this way. Or sometimes you just got to get it out your system. Like, let me at least no longer wonder what happens if I do this. It's now over. I've done it, fucked up dramatically, but I've done it and I've got these takeaways. Or maybe I hit gold or jackpot and I've succeeded on a
Right.
level that I've never imagined. So yeah, I agree with that as well too. I have an episode that I recently dropped. It's called "Are Tech Job Influencers Kind of lying to you?" And it's based off of some of the things that we see. And I'm not gonna get into specifics, of course, but it's based off of some of the things we see with respect to some of the courses they're selling and some of the inflated unrealistic expectations that they are sometimes alluding to or just straight up saying, 6 figures in 6 months, something
Yeah.
like that, right? And so part of that discussion was, well, what's a good boot camp? What's a good situation? What are some telltale signs, either red flags or green flags? So do you have any red flags or green flags someone should look for when they're evaluating a coding boot camp or any type of tech boot camp?
Sure. So I'll start with the red flags. So a coding boot camp, when you're assessing them, and I do have addressed this in many of my books on selecting a coding boot camp to break into the tech industry. Uh, some of the red flags are checking their curriculum and their instructors and what are they teaching, and making sure. And you can ask these questions as you evaluate enrolling in them. Is it state of the art? Is it the most cutting edge at this given moment that's needed? A skill set to break into the tech industry, in your particular domain. Again, as a cybersecurity analyst, are you learning the most uh, uh, relevant information and skill set at this moment? As a data analyst, as a software engineer, as a UI UX, are you learning the most advanced and relevant tools to be able to build your skill set up? And if you're not, that's a red flag right out the gate. That means look for another one. There are lesser ones, unfortunately, because of the proliferation of boot camps and how many that have come out. Some of the content is watered down, but there are a lot of good ones too. I can name three right now: Per Scholas, Springboard, and Flatiron School. All three of which I've had the pleasure of being a part of, and another one, Correlation One, which specializes mostly in cybersecurity. Uh, the green lights, if you will, or the good signs, again, being the most up to date with the tools necessary to train you for the domain that you're going into. Again, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's data analyst, software engineer, UI, UX, and the attention that they give you to successfully train and learn the skill on an individual basis. Everyone learns at a different pace. So making sure that the training is flexible. You have, dozens of references and resources that you can tap into at your own pace and be able to learn the skill and be able to apply it. And then, again, the really effective career development support. Again, they're giving you a strong strategy for your job search. One of the things I always learn to specialize in as a career coach is giving my students or the people I'm working with in our placements the strongest career development and job search strategy I can get at that time. And as a career coach myself in the industry, I have to hold myself accountable for learning those new tools and those most effective tools to present to my the people, my constituents, if you will, that I'm working with, to make sure they're getting the most advanced tools to have a strong job search. So being able to but the last point I'll make is on that note as well is when you're in the coding bootcamp, commit. Again, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, a year, commit. Because if you don't commit, then you don't get anything out of it, in a way. And this is where the old college professor in me, kind of comes out. You cheat yourself a bit. The way I work with students in coding boot camps is I wait till they get to at least 50 to 60% past their primary curriculum. And then we introduce the career development aspect, because I want them to get the knowledge of the skills that they're trying to develop to break into the industry and focus on that and not necessarily have to focus on other things as well. So I try not to crowd them. And then once they get to the 50, 60, or 70 completion mark, then we can work together. Because right now, by that time, you've mastered a few things. You're on the way of doing and completing a few projects. You got your GitHub going, as well as you've either completed or you're almost completed with your capstone. So now we've got room to do career development and get you going in that direction. So I try not to have them bombarded with the trouble of job searching just yet, because you need the skill to land the job to begin with, and then you job search.
Yeah, I like what you said about the commit part. That's what I like to call tech or die. How
Yeah.
long should someone reasonably expect for job placement after finishing a boot camp?
Yeah, now that's going to vary. And that's quite frankly just the tradition of job searching in any time period in history. Again, whether it's the 80s, 90s, or obviously now in the second decade of the 21st century. But the more aggressive you are, and the more strategic you are, and the more focused you are, you'll land a role. Time period is going to vary. Some students I see, and again, this is where networking, again, particularly on LinkedIn, and maximizing and optimizing your LinkedIn profile comes in. The students that are aggressive and that are networking and that already kind of had a strategy in place when they joined the boot camp, they just needed the skills and then to actionize the strategy. Sometimes lightning can strike quick and you can land a job very quickly. I've seen it right after you graduated, or even in many cases before your graduation. A lot of tech boot camps have partnerships and internships with tech companies, and they do hire the students that they trained. Again, IBM has done it, Salesforce has done it, Microsoft has done it, and quite a few others. But then the job search can go stale and it can last. And I've seen that end of the spectrum too. It can last, past 3 months, 6 months, even longer. But again, that's why I wrote my guides. I created my guides, particularly for this domain of coding bootcamp grads, because your job search may be intense, but there are strategies to stay in place, stay on track, manage your psychology and your emotions to stay positive as well as inspired and motivated by it. And then just what I call grind until you start landing interviews. And once you start landing interviews, then that's your opportunity to showcase who you are, and more importantly, what you can do, what you bring to the table, and how, again, ultimately solve their problems, the company's problems. And then that creates more opportunities to hopefully land you the offer letter.
Once again, I'm speaking to Ramone Smith of techcareerguides.com. Ramone has several years of professional experience working as a career coach with coding boot camps. He's worked with some of the top coding bootcamp programs in the nation. So his insights are very valuable for those interested in pursuing or getting the most out of their coding bootcamp or any tech bootcamp experience. The last question I just asked you about was about expectations with respect to job placement. But what, in your experience, are some of the more unrealistic expectations people have going into these types of programs?
Great question. Probably the salaries, the expectations of the salaries. And that's partially the coding boot camps marketing advertising fault too. Um, the flash of get this certification in this particular industry and earn six figures as a headline is a little disingenuous, and that's probably why some of them they attract the students that they get. When the reality is, it should be written somewhere along the lines of gain the skills necessary to build your salary up to 100K over time. But I guess that's not a great marketing tool right there.
No, no.
But that's but let me put it in context. Again, be flexible. And again, I say this to, again, whether I'm working with people in outplacement or coding bootcamp grads, be flexible about your salary requirements because the primary objective is to get in the door, get the job first, and then based on the value you provide and the work that you do that's good and appreciated, you can build your salary up over time. It's a gradual increase, long-term strategy of how you want to lay out your career. So in getting in tech, you always want to have a long-term strategy. You don't want to have a short-term strategy. We have to think long-term. So think, okay, I'm a cybersecurity analyst. I just got this, my first entry-level SOC analyst role with Microsoft, but they're only going to pay me 55K. Depending on your unique situation, take that role. And then they probably have a decent package for you, of time off and vacation and healthcare and all that other good stuff. But the primary thing is you can start your career based on that. In fact, even be flexible about the title role you go for. I remember working with one bootcamp grad. She trained to be a cybersecurity analyst, but took a role at Microsoft as a client success specialist, where she still could apply her skills and her training, but did it in a way to support in many respects, like the role that I did when I worked for Indeed, supporting people with being able to troubleshoot and guide them through how to apply the technology that the primary company is offering them. But you take a $55,000-$60,000 K role, and then you build up. If you're really ambitious, get a side hustle, and then that can add some extra income. Constantly upskill. So you have one certification. Okay, now build your skill set up for another certification, and then build it up. And again, the more value you bring to the marketplace, the more your value increases in the job seeker marketplace. So that by the time you finish after a year or a year and a half with Microsoft in that role, you could either search for a new job that pays more money, or you can put yourself in a position to negotiate with your team leads of either doing extra projects for more money or even just get a straight out promotion. So there's a strategy about how you lead up to that, ultimately that six figure that everyone wants. But be realistic, have a long-term vision, and be strategic and seize the opportunities when they're there. But the primary thing is just take the role. If it fits you, get your foot in the door, get your body in the door in the tech company. And that's where the opportunities will eventually ensue and take off for you.
Hmm. Yeah, those are some truths that I agree with, especially with the point about you might see some numbers. Look, I've seen some crazy scenarios. We used to have the exam. So let's say we did 10 weeks for the A plus or 6 weeks for the network plus, and then the class would go take their exams. Now I didn't have to do this. It was technically my day off, but I would go with them to the exams. Obviously, I'm not sitting right there next to them while they're on the computer at the exam center taking the test. But I would be across the street at the Starbucks, having my latte, whatever. I noticed at this one testing facility, and I used to always just look at it and just be like, damn, that's just messed up. But they would do, the A plus, net plus, and the security plus, and they would have a course where you would learn what you need to learn to pass. And it would be within 2 weeks. The entire thing was like 14 days, 2 weeks, $5,000. Sorry, no, $5,995 or $6,000 basically.
Wow.
And I was like, damn. And whoever signs up for that, you have no idea what you're doing. Unless you are someone, and maybe they market it this way, hopefully, which they did, and I'll explain in a second, but maybe you are someone that just has this knowledge and you just need to get it on paper for whatever government job or whatever type of job you're looking for.
Right. You just need
Right.
the credential.
But they damn sure didn't market it that way. It was just like straight up, get these certs, get into IT. So I used to, but we had business with them. Learners were taking the exam. So, I didn't say anything about it, but I always made a mental note. And I say that because people get gassed. They get gaslit with these expectations that are not realistic. And, boot camp certification, even from a university, you still don't have experience for the most part. So there's still a bit of a bet being placed on your ability to not fold under pressure, to not make a massive screw up, or whatever, and all points in between. So with that said, they're coming for you. You got to get going, man. I can hear them in the background.
Oh, that's New York City. I live in Chelsea. Yeah, I live in the Chelsea area of Manhattan, and I live right next, just a few blocks away from the Lincoln Tunnel, if you're familiar with the geography of New York City. So I get a lot of traffic, including the police sirens. So I get a lot of noise pollution, and it's funny. My windows are closed too for that purpose, but it still gets it. We still get it.
So I'm from New York. I've been in Atlanta for so long. Most people think I'm from Atlanta. I'm actually from New York for a long time, first 30 years of my life. And I lived in Queens and I lived in Harlem. But I remember, living in Harlem, it was so much, like you said, noise pollution, but I slept like a baby right through it. I never noticed it. Fire trucks screaming, dudes playing dice in the vestibule down in the first floor of the building, etc. Yeah. And so I miss it. Chelsea's a great part. That's by Tribeca, I believe, right over there.
Right.
Yep. So I used to work downtown. So Chelsea was awesome too.
Yeah. I'm from the Bronx. My wife and I lived in the Bronx for many years until we bought a new condo here in Chelsea. So we're good. But I do want to backtrack on something. Yeah. Again, going back to our subject matter. So again, that's why when people, two points. For coding bootcamp grads entering the workforce and having real tech workforce and having realistic expectations of salary and everything else, but also for outplacement, people that are in outplacement and were fired from their job or laid off from their job and re-entering the workforce. So for the tech bootcamp grads, this is where, instead of complaining, because I'm still old school with personal responsibility value sets, instead of complaining about the boot camp, which that happens a lot on a lot of sites, take that energy to just say, okay, how I have the skill, how can I apply this to my job search and ultimately perform well in my job? It's more energy to, put it this way, is a better use of our energy to focus on achieving our goals rather than using some platform as an outlet to complain. And here's where it can come back to hurt you. You can eventually start getting interviews with these companies you want, but if they look at your online content and all you did was complain, that kills your value for them potentially, and they'll see it, and they may not hire you just because of an attitude issue. So it's better to just grind, try to get a job, see where the opportunities are, jump on that opportunity, be what's called the leapfrog on lily pads, jump on one opportunity to the next, to the next, building your legacy to be able to eventually land a job and then move from there. For the layoff tech people, many of them made higher salaries in their jobs. So I get this a lot. Okay, I want to get a new job, but I also I'm skeptical because about applying to this new job, they want to hire me, but they're not going to match my old salary. Again, you got to be flexible. And I get it, you're, Gen X or older, you have a certain age, you're used to making a certain amount of money, and someone's going to offer you, half or several $1,000s less than what you were making before. Unless you're moving into a referred position as a vice president or director in a certain company, unless you're moving into a similar situation that you were referred to, it's unlikely you're going to get that same salary after a layoff going to a new company. So again, I suggest where relevant and assessing your own personal situation, your own bill structure and what you're doing, be flexible, because all you need, again, is just to get into the new job. If it's a salary that can at least pay your bills, it should be considered. And then again, you build yourself up to the salary you want.
This conversation we're having about expectations and flexibility is extremely important to someone having success in a boot camp. I've seen many people come in, like you said, from Gen X, from layoffs, from being comfortable with a certain level of pay. And I've seen these same people humble themselves on
Yeah.
their own, on their own volition, humble themselves to go through the process and be open minded to new opportunities and pathways that even the boot camp has not laid out for them,
That's right.
So I've seen that, and I've seen the success that comes with it, but it's very important to have that flexibility with the outcome and as well as a realistic understanding of expectations going into it, because these journeys are in a boot camp, it can be arduous, it's tough. You're trying to, especially if you're, like you said, Gen X, you're trying to rewrite some of these lines in our brain that are
Yeah.
kind of etched in stone. So it's a hard thing to do. So ultimately I would say that when it comes to this, being flexible and having those expectations under a certain understanding of what's realistic will help you have a better experience and not be quickly demoralized and ultimately bow out and quit from a program that has an opportunity to rectify or change your life for the better.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Give yourself a chance to succeed. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a little too deep. So let me take it pull it back to something more relevant. I get this question a lot, which is, and I don't know if but I figure you're kind of more in tune to the space than me. But people want to know: do these companies, especially when it comes to like cybersecurity or software engineering, do they still drug test?
Good question. On some of them do, particularly if they're online. I'm sorry, if they're hiring people for hybrid positions or on site going to the actual brick and mortar job. But if you're doing 100% remote, no.
Mm. So remote means you could toke. Okay, got it.
It's but with that said, it's not wise.
Let me that will have to be something that has to be edited out, I think.
Right.
Or maybe not. But yes, but I understand what you're saying. Right. Presentation, all joking aside, when you're walking into the building, they want to make sure that, you're not that guy. You're not that person. And someone's reputation, the person who hired you, all of a sudden is saying, why is this person here? Who put this person into the building, so to speak? So yeah, okay, so I have one more question. When it comes to a coding boot camp, how should, let's say I participate in a coding boot camp or any type of tech boot camp, how should I present that experience on my resume?
Sure. This is a great question too. And again, I always advise people, particularly as you're putting together your resume, you want to showcase your skill set, your knowledge, and your ability to do the job. So oftentimes, coming from a coding boot camp and you're a graduate, you don't have the experience in the role. And I see a lot of people, again, get spooked. A lot of students get spooked as they apply for jobs on Indeed or LinkedIn or any other platform, and they look at the job description and they say 3 to 5 years of experience, and that immediately makes them scared. So I say, when the way you compensate for not having experience is you make up for it in your education, your skill, and you showcase your ability to do the job. So the things that should go on your resume in place of the experience are the projects that you completed, particularly making sure that they're real life projects that you completed, in your capstone. In most cases, most boot camps have the capstone project that you have to complete in order to graduate and get the certification. That's your experience right there. That's your empirical experience. That's your ability to display what you can do. Get a GitHub account. Keep it updated. List all the projects that you've worked on, as well as on your LinkedIn profile. List your projects and list the hyperlinks where the hiring manager or the recruiter can tap into it and see what you've done. But you want to convey, because you don't have the experience, but you want to convey through your skill, your knowledge, and your know-how, and your ability to do the job. You want to showcase that on your resume, particularly, and again, the 2 parts of the resume, the most important, in my opinion, the professional summary and the technical skills. You showcase them in those areas, and then your education, and then your experience more than likely will be your capstone or the projects you've worked on. You structure it that way, then that should get you some hits for the roles that you're applying to.
Yeah, like you said, especially if you don't have a lot of experience, you got to hit them up with something, and that's the education, and that's also the amount of work that you put in. I'll add one more, unless you did mention it, and I just wasn't paying attention. But I'll add one more, which is the portfolio. Having
Right.
J Davy, techproject.com or whatever it is,
Right.
your portfolio.
Hence your GitHub, right?
Your GitHub, right? You did mention the GitHub, right? So having it so that someone can see it and click and take a look at the work you did and take a look at, so you're just more than a theoretical. You're more than an academic. You're a hands-on person that will help alleviate some fears as to whether or not, you're about this life as someone considers hiring you for whatever role that they have listed. Ramone, this has been a great, insightful experience. Thank you for kind of shedding some of your insight and your valuable tips. Is there anything that you want people to know, anything you want to kind of promote so that people can at least say, okay, I want to continue the conversation with Ramone?
Sure. So people can connect with me and they can look at my website. It's techcareerguides.com. From the techcareerguides.com, they can see me with all my my social media. Basically, they can see my books on Amazon. They can catch me on Instagram. They can catch me on YouTube. And I'm heavy on LinkedIn, so people can definitely tap into me on LinkedIn, Ramone Smith on LinkedIn. And that's where I can be reached through my website, techcareerguides.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Ramone. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for coming by and just again informing us with everything that you've experienced and the conversations that you've had with people, and kind of rounding that up so that people can learn from this. I appreciate it, and have a good one, man.
You too, John. Thank you for allowing me to come on. It's a pleasure to be with you and your audience. Feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions or you want to bring me back, my friend.
Respect.
Subscribe to Tech or Die so you'll automatically get a notification when the newest episode drops. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and most podcast directories. You can also play the show straight from the website, techordie.com. We're on social media too. Check us out on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Wherever you are in this world, remember one thing. Success is a choice.